PR Connections Radio presents.
I guess you can be very successful without one, and probably some people do. But I would not have accomplished anywhere near what I have accomplished without a mentor. I have had a number of mentors, and my whole life has changed dramatically. I went from going nowhere to having a business that operates all over the world. If you want to win in a big way, you want to get a mentor. It's almost like getting a direct pipeline from their mind to your mind, where you're gaining all their wisdom, all their experience, and all the studying that they've done over a number of years. And like that, you get it all in a short period of time. Are mentors important? Well, I'm going to tell you, mentors literally changed the course of my life. Let's take a look at what thinking into results is and what it could do for you, how it came about. You see, my life had changed dramatically. I went from earning nothing to earning over $1 million a year. And I was sitting one day and I was thinking, how did all this happen? Do you know, I was reading Think and Grow Rich. I was studying Earl Nightingale's material. But a lot of people have read those books and studied Earl's material. And they weren't accomplishing what I was accomplishing. So I had to ask myself, what am I doing so different? You see, I had been raised to believe if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. I was earning over $1 million a year, and I didn't think I was that bright. I was also raised to believe if you don't go to school, you can't win. Well, I hadn't gone to school. I went to high school for about 2 months. I didn't have a good job. I owned the entire company. If you want to be happy, healthy, and prosperous, it's all here. Thinking into results is going to show you how to get it. If what I've said really triggered something in your mind and you're thinking maybe, contact the certified PGI consultant. Hit the button, leave the information. Do yourself a favor. Sit down and talk to them about what this program can do for you. This very well could be the decision that will change the rest of your life.
Welcome. Thank you, Bob. Bob's voice and his lips were a little off today, but he's talking about mentorship. And today we're thinking in the results. I'm a certified consultant. This is our premier program at Proctor Gallagher. And there's over 50 years of experience in teaching personal growth and success. It's a foundation that's been brought together into thinking in results. And today we're going to talk about the terror barrier. And what we mean by that, it goes back to our title, Thinking in the Results. Change your thinking, change your results. It's a lot easier to say than to do. Because there's an expression, in order to have something you've never had before, you have to do something you've never done before. And there's a thing about the human condition. We do not like change. We don't like doing something new. It's the unknown. And that's at the heart of what we're going to talk about today, how to deal with the things that you don't want to do, but they're necessary for your success. So I would like to bring on my guest today is John Gage. He's a student of Proctor Gallagher, and he's a trained voice actor and very, very interesting guy. And I'm very committed to working with and applying the Thinking in Results program. So I believe John Gage is coming on here in a moment.
Hi, Sid.
There he is, the mystery guest.
I got lost. Sorry.
Well, welcome.
I couldn't find my way to the computer.
Yeah, I was telling our viewers, and we're grateful for our viewers to be with us today, allowing us to share this information that I feel can make a difference in their lives. And I won't say the punchline of what this is all about. In order to have something you've never had before, you have to do something you've never done before. That's something that our subconscious resists. And John's got a couple ideas. We were talking earlier, like expanding on that, the thought to have something you've never had before, you got to do something you've never done before.
Right.
Change
Well,
results, change your thinking. So tell us something, John.
well, because when you think about that, a lot of people don't. I'm going to bring up the little stick figure because that's something a lot of people don't think about. But sometimes because we do think in pictures, it's nice to have a picture, and there's these little antennas, and the antennas are like imagination, intuition, memory, your predictive nature, your perception, your will/focus. These are all things that this little compartment here that holds this supercomputer inside our skull does. And there's two sections to it. And what that little guy does is he separates those sections. And you've got the conscious mind, which can dream, can think of things that you want to do. And, when we were in school, that's the part of the brain that the teacher goes, John, focus, but you can't. Because that part of the brain's working overtime, but that's the part that has reason and can say, I want to do these things. But then you got the subconscious mind, the second part of that brain, that says, no. This is your truth, because it only understands this is your truth. This is what you're doing, who you are. You don't change that because it has to be convinced to change. Like let me see here. What's difficult? Like changing a child's behavior is kind of the same thing. It's like you don't want to do that, and it's also the part that is very resistant to change. I've had raising children. I had one child that would not change anything. It would just, that particular child just did not enjoy change. But once we were able to get her to change the situation we were in, he was like, oh, well, this is great. Why didn't we do this before? And you're like, but during that process, it's like, you got to get her through that barrier because she's terrified of what's going to happen. So our subconscious is kind of like that. And so we have to push it. Just trust me, over there is where you want to be. No, I'm fine here. No. So you push it, and that's what the affirmations that we talk about all the time do. They push it through, because you got to get through that barrier. Like you said, you can't do something you've never done before without doing something you've never done before. You can't have it unless you do something different. And
John,
my subconscious is resistant to that.
John, you said something that I hadn't thought about this before.
Uh-oh.
And I was holding on to it.
What I'm told.
Oh, now I know. When you talked about our reality,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned, and I want to say I believe, our reality is our truth. Everything we believe, that's our truth.
Right.
And that's coming out of the subconscious. Everything in our subconscious we believe is true. And now we want them to do something different. Well, we have to take this new idea, this new task, and bring it into the subconscious as a truth, that they can do it. They know they can do it. They expect the results.
Right.
And that's where, at the heart of our teaching here with thinking and results, is repetition. You can only change your thinking. We like to say there's two ways. One, a traumatic event happens in your life, or I want to say the country 9/11, but a divorce, death in the family, that's trauma, and that can shift your thinking or behavior. But to consciously do it, what we're talking about was something positive. It takes elite coaching and over a period of time, and repetition is at the heart of it. So the example you were giving is the key thing is how to recreate, I want to say, a new truth, a new belief system. So you can believe something. Once you believe it and you know you can do it, then you can expect the results that you want.
Well, and
so that's my mini sermon.
Well, that's kind of what Bob talked about, though, because once you convince that subconscious that no, this is what my reality is, it starts kind of freaking out, going, well, if this is reality, where is it? And it starts finding things and bringing it to reality, and that's, call it vibration, call it frequency, call it divine intervention. I don't want to just pick one here, because there's a lot of different beliefs out there, and I just want you to understand what you're doing. And I've talked about this before. They can actually measure when you're thinking. They can measure that thought now. We have machines that are so sensitive they can measure your thought leaving and something coming in. You've got to be receiving. So there's things in this is a magnet, just like your heart's a magnet. These are all things that are working in conjunction, and they're sending and receiving signals. Back 1,000 years ago when you were young, Sid, and radio was new, it was just, you couldn't hear the radio until you refined it down into a signal, and then it could reproduce from thousands of miles away. And it was a phenomenal thing when that came about. Look at the internet.
Yes.
You have literally 3,000 miles apart. We're having this conversation in real time. And it's not a signal that we hear. We see, the only thing we see is the result of that signal, what we wanted out of it. And that's kind of how the subconscious works. It goes, oh, okay, this is reality now. So it brings it in and creates that. And that's kind of what, I hope I explained this correctly, but that's kind of how this works in as simplified terms as I can put it.
You gave me a thought.
Uh-oh.
And that is, I don't know if it's happened with you, if you're asking somebody, can we Zoom? And generally it's an older person who says, I don't Zoom.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day that
my knees don't work. I can't Zoom.
This is our men's group at church, and we're going to have a special Zoom, which we hadn't done before for the men's group, because it's always in person at after service. And the guy's 90 years old, and
Okay.
still smart as those. He hasn't lost any of his faculties. He's just as intelligent and spunky as ever. And he said, I don't Zoom. I said, well, we'll send you the link, and you click on it, and your computer will upload the Zoom app into your phone and connect you. You only have to click one thing in it or two, and it'll open up. And he says, well, my wife does that stuff. I'm not. Well, then let her open it up, and you can sit there and see everybody. But I'm not going to push it because his reality is his belief that he can't Zoom.
Right.
And he was a technical guy years ago.
And exactly. And yeah. But his idea of technical is different than what it is today. And I've said this many times. If you believe you can't, you're right. if you believe you can, you're right. My children would say, I can't do that. And I say, you're right. What? That's not, it's like, that's not what a parent's supposed to say. I said, well, do you believe you can? Well, yeah. Okay. You're right. And it confuses them a little bit. But now that they're older and almost 40, aging myself, they understand that concept now, because belief and faith is what we really have. The book I'm reading, the current book I'm reading, about the secret of getting rich, he talks about.
Do you have the book there?
I do. Give me a second.
Oh, it's something that people would.
The science of getting rich.
Yeah, we recommend that.
I find myself literally, I've been reading this book, and it's 77 pages total. I'm literally on the last chapter now. I've been reading this book for 4 weeks because when I read, and I don't know how many people do this, but my lovely wife and I were talking about this actually today. I read with a highlighter in my hand, because I'll read a paragraph and then I'll go, what in that paragraph is important? Then I'll highlight it. And then I'll go, what am I supposed to get out of that paragraph? Then I'll underline it.
I like that, John.
Because I want to absorb as much knowledge from whatever I'm reading as I can, even if it's for pleasure. Like I do read a lot of fantasy novels, because if you're a nerd, bend bars and lift gates, what my shirt says, and Dungeons and Dragons, that was a check that you would have to do if you wanted to be a superhuman and break out of prison and bend the bars. That's the check you would roll. So, I really like to kind of get into and understand the characters, the science behind the science, that kind of thing. I want to go, okay, what does this mean? What am I supposed to get out of it? Because what Sid gets out of it is going to be different than what John gets out of it.
A couple of thoughts came to mind. One is the reading a book multiple times. Bob Proctor. This teaching is based on Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and it was given to him in 1962. He was earning $4,000 and he owed $6,000, and someone gave him the book to read and gave him a little gold card on the back. You can put what your goal is and a date. And Bob says, I wrote down $25,000, but I didn't believe I could do it. But Ray Stanford, who gave him the book, believed I could do it. So I believed his belief. And then, amazingly, he started hearing conversations about business opportunities. And he heard someone say, there's money making clean office buildings, offices. And to quote Bob, he said, I'm not proud. So he went and got himself a used polishing machine and some mops and buckets, and started getting clients. And eventually was in 6 cities. He's in Toronto, in Montreal, Cleveland, Boston, Atlanta, and London.
And just because he liked to go there.
Yes. And he didn't know why he was successful, because he was having success. He was making over $1 million a year, and he didn't know how he did it. And because he was reading Think and Grow Rich, he gave it to family and friends, because we're talking 3 or 4 or 5 years here. No one's life changed but his.
And see, that's a good example of somebody innately being able to understand and change their thought process by what they're reading. Because we've talked about one of the things, like with weight loss, they teach you a thing to do. They say, do this and you'll lose the weight. Well, why? The human psyche, the subconscious needs to know why that's important, or it's not going to change. It needs to know that this has to be the way life is, period, and here's why. And the subconscious will is a logical part of your persona, and it's going to say, oh, okay, well, I don't know. So it's that pushing, like pushing the child, because I literally would have to push my child, because I had a job that moved me a couple of times, and every time we moved, this child just absolutely fought it. And then when they got there, I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And you're like, you just made my life a living, you know what? And now you're happy. Thank you. I'm glad you approve. So you learn as a parent that if I just push them through it, they'll be fine. And that's kind of the way I started treating my subconscious, because I understood that as a father, that if I just push it through what it needs to do, it'll be fine. And speaking of, writing dates and times, I do that every morning.
Very good.
I handwrite it every morning. I take an hour every morning to myself. I have a sun lamp, so I get this beautiful tan. But I use it for the vitamin D, and I've got a grounding mat that I use to kind of to get in touch with nature, because it's hard for me to get outside right now because of my mobility issues. And do my breathing, listen to some, I listen to some things that help my mind get focused, which, that is will focus kind of. And I focus on what's important and why, and then I'm grateful for it. And I think learning to be grateful for something you don't have as if you have it is probably the most powerful thing you can do for yourself and everybody else around you.
When you said that, the affirmation that we use is, I'm so happy and grateful now that, and you're putting the future, I'm so happy and grateful now that, and you put it in the present, like you've already got it. And when you're doing that every day, I won't say magic happens, but your belief system and your behavior, you start doing the things that will get you what you want, because you can already picture that you've got it.
Mm-hmm. And see, for me, the now that is kind of was fighting with my subconscious, so I just changed it. I just say, I'm grateful. I weigh 275, have a 40-inch waist, 72-inch chest, 10% body fat, walk a mile per day, So, and I do that. Honestly, I record myself with Zoom every morning. After I write it down, I say it 3 times every morning. But I found for me that the now that was getting in the way.
How interesting. I've been using it for 9 years.
I understand, and it worked. But again, we talk. What works for you may not completely work for me, but I had to assess that for myself. I had to go, why am I not feeling it? So I had to take that out, because now that means, in my mind, means that I still have a journey. And by saying I'm grateful, I'm grateful my voice acting business nets over $1 million a year. There's no pause in between that. It's a reality to me. That's how I see it. And it may not work for you. Do you see my point is that we're just a little bit different in how our subconscious works. It's kind of like your children. I had 2 children. I raised 2 children. Well, 4. I have 4 children. So raising 4 children is they're all different.
Oh yeah.
They may require a lot of the same stuff, but they're going to require just something a little different. Each and every one of them.
As you've been talking, a thought occurred to me, because we've talked about this before. Let's say your transformation of where you are today, how you think and what you're doing versus how things were when we met. And gradually you've created the new you piece by piece as different. I'm going to say in God's good time, when you were ready, the ideas came and you took action.
Yes.
And you had to face the terror barrier, which is the term that we use when you've got a plan, a goal. You're going to do. You want something you've never had before, as we started this with, and there's steps in that plan that when it's time to do them, you're resisting, and it's an emotional thing. You just don't want to do it. And what we're teaching is to recognize when that happens. And that's where the being able to do the repetition, that you've already done it, you have it. And you I like to say, and you enjoy doing, you embrace this thing that you were afraid to do because it's the unknown. But that's that's the magic of being human. You get to discover so many things.
And one of the secrets I found for getting through that terror barrier is just doing it. Don't plan for it. Don't get all your ducks in a row. That will come. Your ducks will line up. You just have to start. And it may not be anything big. It may be something small, but every day do something small that's productive towards your goal.
You reminded me of a quote of Don Shula, who was the coach of the Miami Dolphins back in the 70s, the only team to have a perfect season. And it's real simple. The hardest thing is the first step. Mm-hmm. The hardest thing is the first step of going after whatever it is. And I like to say, and the first step can just be writing it down. You have the idea and you write it down. Then you figure out.
That's still moving forward.
You've done something, and you're once you've written it down, and we teach you're reading it every day, what you want, when you want it, what you're going to give for it. Your mind, the subconscious, starts giving your conscious mind some ideas.
In here, it can be forgotten. If you're writing it down, it's never forgotten. That was a really hard lesson for me. But I learned it.
Good. Well, we're up at 28 and a half minutes here. And so we should be winding it up. One quick thing, when you're talking about thoughts and being able to machines that can tell that you're thinking or thoughts are things, thoughts are vibration. And this equipment measures the vibration. Vibration is energy. I've never seen those machines or that kind of equipment, but it certainly makes sense. So, John, today I want to thank you for coming on board here and sharing your thoughts and some of your experiences. And hold up that book again for a second. If you're not familiar with this, Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, written in 1910. It's in public domain, and it can change your life. It's really talking about getting what you want and how to change your thinking, things to do. So I think I got 20 seconds here. So I want to thank everybody that was with us today. And you can reach out to me at sid.thinkingintheresults.com. And You can schedule time to talk or just ask a question. I'll be happy to reach out to you. So until next week, Knowing Doing Gap next week. Thank you.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.